the title of my little talk, introduction, mingles in very well with the mission of this conference. We want to change towards safe and sustainable chemistry for a better planet. So what is the basic idea? And that is a kind of DNA of bluesign where we're coming up with since 2000, since 23 years. So actually it's managing inputs. We start with the chemical suppliers. We make sure that the chemical suppliers are qualified and that they provide safe and sustainable chemistry that we assess. Then safe and sustainable chemistry can be used by textile manufacturers to produce safe and sustainable materials, and safe and sustainable materials can be used by the retailers and brands to sell their garments in a safe way. And the foundation of everything is a qualification of the chemical company, and that was very nice to see that Tanatex actually showed today the result of our holistic company assessment, which is composed of management system, so quality, occupational health, safety, environment, product stewardship, which is the core of the whole system to provide the data for chemical assessment, resource productivity, environment, looking at air, water, soil, and looking at occupational health and safety. So this is the foundation, and only then a company can actually provide the data that we need for our holistic chemical assessment. And this is a kind of unique product in the market because we have a hazard-based approach and a risk-based approach. So you can see the gatekeeper here on the left-hand side. So we check for MRSL substances. We make sure that there's no SVHC substances, and we assess the classification of the product, make sure that carcinogens, reproductive toxins, and mutagenic substances will not enter the system. And then comes the risk part. And in the risk part, we consider the actual application of the chemical product. And we assess here whether the workplace is safe using this chemistry under the foreseen application conditions. We look at consumer safety. Is the product produced with that chemistry safe for the consumer, meaning RSL compliance? And then we look at the impact on air and the environment, aquatic environment. Also, we now included sustainability attributes. We started with recycled content and made from renewable feedstock, which is a new feature in our system. So that's the reason why we can talk about safe and sustainable, due to this holistic approach and due to the inclusion of sustainability attributes. And with our system, we always make sure that we adhere to the highest conformance level in ZDHC, which is currently the chemicals to zero progressive. And in our chemical assessment scheme, you see here the yellow arrows. Those two elements assure the highest ZDHC conformance level currently. The other assessment areas are on top of that. It's an additional service offered by bluesign. We just launched our new public finder. You can scan here the QR code to access this, where you can also search for products that have sustainability attributes. And we can say, currently, I would say this is the only search engine for safe and sustainable chemistry, and this all feeds into the ZDHC gateway. And currently, we have 22,000 fully assessed chemical products here. Then I would also like to emphasize our bluesign tool. A bluesign tool for chemical assessment is actually a great application for the chemical supplier. The chemical supplier can enter the formulation, all the details, CAS numbers, and so on, and they can do quick compliance checks, whether their product complies with MRSL limits, with RSL limits, with consumer safety, I mentioned already, with impact on air and water emission requirements. It's a quick compliance check, also SVHC substances, which makes it very attractive, I would say, for chemical companies that they have access. It's open, yeah, all the data is available. And they can start to also improve their R&D processes and save actually time and money. Yeah. Then I would like to come to another topic. So I talked a lot about chemical companies and their products, but how can we actually help manufacturers, textile manufacturers, to drive positive change? Here we launched a new service. It's called Impact Service, and this is composed of certain elements. One important element is an on-site facility assessment with a gap analysis, and we collect impact data that we verify. So you get an annual impact report with verified data, for example, for greenhouse gas emission, energy consumption, water consumption, chemical consumption. And on top of that, we would offer a footprint calculation on material basis. So material-specific footprint data. And which is the core of the bluesign system, of course, we will analyze your whole SIL, so we will determine the share of bluesign-approved product, fully assessed chemicals, but we would also look at commodity chemicals. We would give you advice, that was a very interesting point, how to monitor, how to make sure that those commodity chemicals have the right quality. So we have a whole guideline for that, input stream management for manufacturers. And we would give you recommendations how to replace non-assessed chemistry with better chemistry as well. So how would that look like? So you would enter your data on our bluesign cube, which is a kind of system partner area. Then an expert, an assessor from bluesign would come and verify the data and would issue then an impact report with bluesign verified data. And it looks like that. For example, you get a management, an executive summary for the management with the key findings and a set of data which are verified with a trend compared to the baseline. So I just wanted to, it's the last slide, I just wanted to line out the benefits for manufacturers and for brands. Actually impact data and chemical inventory data will be third-party verified, and nowadays everything needs to be third-party verified if you want to make green claims, for example. And you get a roadmap for impact reduction and chemical change. Also you get material footprints calculated, and this can all pave the way to the bluesign system partnership, which also allows you to label products, to label with a bluesign approved label or bluesign product label. The benefits for the brands are very apparent. Brands need verified data of their supply chain. It's a trend nowadays, and there's this green claims directive in Europe soon being effective, and brands cannot only say we reduce impact of our supply chain or not having verified data. It's a very clear requirement. And that is very important and to substantiate any green claim a manufacturer or brand would make. Thank you very much. That was my last slide. And if you want to know about our services, please get in touch with Sanoj and Prashant. Maybe you can stand up shortly. Those are the guys there. They can give you assistance. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I would like audience participation also. So if there is any questions in your mind, please raise your hand. We will run the mic and you can ask to any of the panelists. Maybe later, Pankaj. Okay, the first thing I would like to ask is Daniel. I think bluesign was one of the first certifications which focused on input chemicals. So my question is that would input chemicals always guarantee you clean outputs? and do you think chemical manufacturers need to do anything else?
Yes, of course. I mean, I gave a hint already when I've given my short presentation. I mean, it's realistically not all the chemicals used in a textile mill are assessed. So that's reality. That's maybe 60, 70, 80, ideally 90. You will never, or that's very difficult to get full conversion. That's the first point, okay? But in general, the equation is valid. Clean inputs, clean outputs. I would say it's a good equation, and if you do it right, this is valid. Yeah? But what about the rest of the chemicals that is used? Then you need to apply, you need to implement a system in the manufacturer, at the manufacturer side. So, and that is our goal, to implement, to not only doing testing, but implement, enable the company to implement a compliance system which is continuously delivering compliant products. And that includes chemicals that may not be certified, right? And materials that may not be certified, because that is the reality. right? And that is solved within the bluesign framework with our input stream management guidelines. So we would give you advice which materials, which commodity chemicals need to be tested, what do you need to ask your suppliers to have safe inputs. And if you do it all right, yeah, then of course you can say clean inputs equal clean outputs. And as well, you need to pay attention to cross-contamination. Of course, that is a big thing. So you may use one chemical which is safe for one product, but may cause an issue for another product. Those kind of things, or if we talk about tooling agents, we just had this issue. Of course, you need to pay attention to those chemicals as well. So that's my answer.
Yeah, thanks. John, coming to you, how do you ensure credibility? How do you ensure transparency in your EcoPassport certification?
Thank you very much, Prasad. It's a good question. How do we ensure credibility and transparency? First of all, you have to be completely open. When we test the chemical products, if we find an impurity, we collaborate initially with the chemical manufacturer, we identify it, and we actually say, we have an issue here. This chemical can come from one of three sources. It could be from your synthesis, maybe the synthesis wasn't quite complete. It could come from cross-contamination, as we've just touched, maybe of raw materials, or non-intentionally added in the raw materials coming into the chemical supplier. So we'll discuss, we'll collaborate, and we'll try and work our way through the situation. And then, if they identify the problem, they can send a fresh sample, we recertify it, and then hopefully it passes. Once the chemical has passed, it goes onto the Ercotex buying guide. This is completely transparent. We have 25,000 products on the buying guide, which have all been certified for the EcoPassport. People processing can actually source across all the technical groups any one of those products. There's a link to the chemical manufacturer. There's normally an email and there's normally a name. So it's completely open and transparent. People can see who's got the EcoPassport and who has not. As was mentioned earlier today, to give it credibility, we tackle misuse claims. Colourtex raised it. And if somebody is claiming they actually meet the requirements of Standard 100, but if we don't have the EcoPassport certification, we will tackle it. And then finally, it's a value proposition, and it's a very open value proposition. You can see on the buying guide who has Standard 100. And if they source EcoPassport certified products, there's less testing, it's more efficient, it's more cost effective. And for the dye and chemical manufacturer, they have open access through the buying guide to everybody with Standard 100, so they can actually alter their value proposition. As opposed to being a cost of certification, it's now an opportunity to gain market share with their products with Standard 100 customers. Thank you.
Thanks. Karthik, coming to you. So would like to know, how is your update process? How do you update your chem map or your standards, and how do you communicate and implement it with your customers, clients?
Thank you. It's a vital question because the current scenario, and it's not just current scenario, it's always very regular updates on new technology, new processes, which also leads to increased hazardous nature, and that also in alignment with new regulations which keeps coming up. So the world is evolving in all fronts, and that is where, as I said, we have a kind of 80% of our teams or scientists and who work continuously on the material-based risk, as well as working very closely with the regulatory bodies in all countries. And we have been kind of a very, very strong base, more of a R&D center based in our headquarters, and who has kind of very good connectivity in all other countries and very closely working with regulatory bodies. And we keep conducting webinars, we can keep sharing Eurofins Fuse as a newsletter, as well as conduct live training programs, online training programs also. Even ChemMap has an online academy where if you want to have some certain kind of trainings, overviews, we keep sharing that.
Thanks, Karthik. Let me ask you a little controversial question now. So Pankaj was talking about one industry, one standard. Your thoughts?
Okay, so it's good to have certain alignments, and I think ZDHC is doing a great job to do so. So I see it as they create the smallest common denominator, all right? So, which is good. So they define a baseline. But there will always be, I mean, you don't do the job, you don't do the verification, right? So you need service providers, you need solution providers, and the solution providers, they are in a competition, and they compete for the best solution, right? That's the nature of the thing. But important is that you have a choice to cover the baseline with many different solution providers, and all of them may have a slightly different service proposal, okay? And I think ZDHC was very successful first you started the pyramid system with level 1. That was the standard, it was the baseline. Then you moved up, you jumped to kind of level 2, that was not so relevant. So, and we were lucky to be on level 3 from the start with our input stream. Thank you for taking that up in your system, our input stream management mission, vision, idea. And now the new standard is level 3. Right, and now we're moving on, and that is actually good for the industry. But there's always a particular service proposal from every company that needs to be considered. So if we talk about bluesign, we have this holistic chemical assessment, and we do very detailed company assessment with ratings, okay? So you can be sure that ZDHC requirements are covered, and a little bit more, yeah? And if you really want to go for safe and sustainable chemistry, if you want to be a step further than the baseline, then it's a good option, certainly.
John, your thoughts? Or
I have great sympathy with this question. As I said, not so many years ago, I was working for Huntsman Textile Effects. I was involved in sustainability, and I was being inundated with Ercotex, bluesign, requests, ZDHC, and then Inditex. And I was the poor guy who had to go to production when Inditex started the list, and that's for 2 samples of each of our 2,000 products. That didn't make me popular within Huntsman at the time. Now I've moved to the dark side, as some of you may consider it. The advantage, as has been outlined, we have the ZDHC, we have the foundational level, we have the progressive level. That's a standard almost across the industry. I think there's 40 now brands and retailers follow it. And there's different ways of getting there. And there's different options to getting there, which suits the circumstances. There is competition there. And competition keeps down the price. I was thinking about this before. If there was just one standard, one certifier, and I had to put up prices to the dyeing chemical industry at one point, imagine if the prices went up 20% because of testing costs. There'd be cries of, we have a monopoly, we can't have a monopoly. So I think we have competition. We reach out as Ercotex and Hohenstein to all the other stakeholders. We try and collaborate as best we can with the industry stakeholders and try and come up with common standards as opposed to creating new standards. And the partnership with ZDHC is an example of this. The future, we will see, but it's a case of working together and collaborating across the certification schemes, but just as importantly, from the chemical manufacturers to the processors and the brands and the retailers. Thank you.
But do you feel, John, that, say, for example, brands have today different RSLs? Then you have an Ecotex 100, you have a bluesign standard. Would it be possible to harmonize anything in product safety? We have been able to do something on the MRSL, but what about the RSL?
I would say we can always harmonize going forward, and I would say from where we came from, if we remember the journey so far from 2011 at ITMA Barcelona, when the detox campaign really launched, and I was on stage at that point facing a similar size audience with Greenpeace asking us about our impurities, they called it, or harmful byproducts in our chemicals, it was almost chaos. The brands and the retailers weren't harmonized at all. The chemical manufacturers weren't harmonized. I sat on the very first committee with Mark Sumner's head in London with all the dyeing chemical manufacturers coming up with the first MRSL, and we harmonized because we had a burning bridge behind us. We had to go. At that point, we were losing our license to operate. Share prices of all the major brands and retailers were coming down, and we've now gone on a journey, and we are where we are. We are 12 years later. There's far more harmonization, there's far more reaching out, and you're correct. there's very little difference actually between the RSLs. We've got more in common than actually pulling us apart. And it is a case of making sure as we move forward from this place, and bear in mind where we came from, there was no coordination. It's a journey. We've come closer together, and hopefully in the next decade or so, it's taken 12 years to get here, we'll become far closer. Because we've all got the same common aims and objectives, and it's important to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks. Great, John. Karthik, to you. I would like to hear from you what are the general challenges in the certification schemes that we have, and how can we overcome these challenges?
Yeah. Before that, I would like to add one point also for your previous question when it comes to what kind of approach, right? So when you talk about one standard, in my view, and that is actually, I would like to relate that to the question which you have asked also. I would actually start, I would like to ask a question for answering this to the forum here, and all are very well experienced and very much involved in the standard which I see as one standard is sustainability, right? It's not the process, there can be many ways to achieve, but the one standard we all need to achieve is sustainability. And the question I would like to ask whoever can share, in the current scenario in 2022, the global apparel exports is estimated to be $1.5 trillion. And this is excluding the domestic market of each country. So it's purely exports. It can be including, for example, exports from countries like India to China also it happens. So pure estimated export value is to be 1.5 trillion USD. Out of which, the question is, what percentage of clothing is sustainable clothing?
Any guess?
20% answer. Any other answer? Less than 5%. Any other answer? Any other guesses? Less than 1% maybe. Okay. So now the answer for your question is this. The awareness towards how we should become sustainable, where we are, and what kind of steps we need to take, right? So the awareness and then acceptance, as well as like seeing these audits or testing, inspection programs, third-party services or solutions are seen as a burden, whereas these are all tools to help you become sustainable. Do you agree? All those organizations who are leaders in sustainability, they have thrived on using these tools, whether it can be self-initiated or it can be pushed from a brand or any regulatory bodies. But these are all tools which helps organizations towards becoming sustainable. And that is extremely important now. Yeah, one gentleman, one answer was correct, but the precise answer is only 3.9% of those total 1.5 trillion is estimated to be sustainable. Okay, so that is the state of reality now. And what we need to do is take any of these, and ZDHC is one of the best tools, one of the best platforms, which helps all of us to be, because I have been associated with the process for a very long time, so I know what I have been doing and from Bangladesh days. So many progress has happened, and even now if you see the brands who have been here, knows the kind of progress Bangladesh has achieved in terms of sustainability, in terms of having LEED certified facilities, green factories, and all those kind of things. So that helps us. These are all the kind of scenarios where acceptance or embracing those tools which are necessary for our sustainability journey. So that's what I'd like to submit.
Thank you. I'll open up to the audience. I think Pankaj, you had a question. Saurabh has a question. Let's take two questions.
I have two questions. One, today at 2023, we are a chemical company, we are a chemical supplying company. So either we have to go for Hornstein, bluesign, Eurofins, or all three of them?
All three the better.
All of the above.
So the second question is that even if, as Mr. Prasad correctly told, that down to another 10, 12 years, I believe entire harmonization process will be over. So at that time, what will be the reply? All three of them, or at that time it will be one?
Well, see, as Daniel explained, so what, I mean, seriously, if you think about it, you have to understand that there is some commonality in the different standards, in the different approaches. So, as Karthik also said, can we ever have one sustainability standard? If you say, my product is sustainable, there are so many attributes, in the field of sustainability. You can have material sustainability, you have talking about water, your resource efficiency, you're talking about product safety, you're talking about end of life. So there are several aspects that we talk about when we talk about sustainability, and the same thing is about chemical management. And when you talk about RSL, why do all these brands have different RSLs? You have to understand that the materials which different brands use are totally different. A footwear brand has totally different materials as compared to a fashion brand or as compared to an outdoor brand. And there, as Daniel said, there could be a baseline, there could be a common area which can be that what Pankaj desires, that one industry and one standard. But there will be always certain additional layers, and there will be always certain things.
I look it as Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Thumbs Up, and Campa-Cola.
Yes.
Can I answer? I would like to share a personal experience, and as Prasad also mentioned, I am an avid marathoner. Initially, like when I decided to get fit, I was kind of a easy-go-lucky person. I was happy, enjoying my life, and one sudden timeline, I thought I should get fitter. Then I joined gym. Then I got some muscle cramps and some issues. Then I joined yoga. It was very boring for me. It was too slow and all those kind of things. Then I started running. Then after starting running, then I realized I had a lot of issues which while running it came out, and I had to go through some treatments. It was somewhere around 6 to 8 months of some therapies. And I felt it's kind of too strenuous. But I wanted some variations. Then I went into cycling. Then only that was the time I started getting to know about triathlon, which is a combination of swimming, cycling and running. Okay, and I have again, that probably Prasad might not have told, I have completed my full Ironman event, full and half Ironman event, which is a combination of these three events in back to back on the same day, which is the full Ironman event. For you to understand the magnanimity, 4 kilometers of swimming, 90 kilometers of cycling, and 180 kilometers of cycling, and 42 kilometers of running, all in the same day. And the cutoff time is 17 hours. So the point answer I would like to say is, for if you decide to get fit, it's a combination of many things you may have to do, and clubbed with nutrition, clubbed with meditation, clubbed with many other things, right? So true sustainability is not one solution. So that is one part of the answer. Second part of the answer, with the kind of scenario we are less than 4% sustainable, we three are not sufficient. There is a lot of requirement in the world, a lot of abundance needed, and you may have to get 10 more of these service providers and solutions for us to become truly sustainable. Thank you.
Nice, thanks. Yes, Pankaj.
Thank you all of you for sharing your views on this particular point and taking it into consideration of discussion. That's most important. And I am sure this discussion will end up, all of us, with one single standard. Because few decades back, we were discussing all different hazard symbols, statements, and everything. Means each country were having their own different classification, hazard classification. And today we are working on a globally harmonized system. And every country is using that particular. So similarly, here also, we will have a single standard, I am sure. And yes, certifying agency definitely needed to the industry just to show the mirror where they stand. And they have their own methodology of certifying based on the single standard. So the approach might be different for each certifying agency. And any chemical or textile manufacturing units will not have any difficulty in that particular part. But currently, every certifying agency have their own standards and methodology, and you need to follow all with the same pace. So that's the issue. That's where we need to work it out. My question was different to all the panelists. That is regarding PFAS. Okay. PFAS, as you all must be knowing that some of the dyestuffs are also having, I'm not sure whether it's fall in the definition of PFAS or not, but if I look at very closely, it does. Yeah. But if I look at the chemical list described under the PFAS and the test method, none of the dyestuff is falling. But some brands already taking steps to hold it back. So what's...
I can answer. We were thinking about this topic, and we know that there were some chemical suppliers approaching us and making us aware of this issue. And at bluesign we said, okay, we have a PFAS phase-out program, but those chemicals are exempted right now because it doesn't make sense. We also checked in detail the restriction proposal from the European Union, which is a proposal. It's not effective. It's a proposal. And it would fit into this category, actually. But this proposal is not final yet. And there's still, we're still in the stakeholder consultation period. And you can still influence the process, right? And we think, as you, if there's one C with fluorine, right? It's not really what PFAS is. So we try to tackle a different class of PFAS chemicals with long chains, like at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And those pose a risk, and I'm not sure if those dye stuff would pose a risk to the consumer, to be honest.
Ideally not, but if we go through the EPA classification or the definition, yeah.
I think there's room for exemptions, and it's not the final.
I agree that, but as I said, some of the brands and some of the houses already taken steps into that direction.
Yeah, it's about creating awareness. I think that it's not at the moment not the biggest issue you may have. Yeah.
I'd just like to add one point, and not so many years ago there was an issue with titanium dioxide based on study on rats on very high level of dust. And there was a proposal to ban titanium dioxide across the whole of industry, from sun lotions to paints to obviously textiles. And it was by collaboration with the stakeholders, the government bodies, etc., where it came to a more sensible one. So you've now got titanium dioxide dust below a certain nanometer, etc., which enabled the proposed legislation and ban to be overturned. And we've come up with a very sensible solution. And I would say in this situation, it's a kind of similar approach. Yes, PFAs are bad, as nobody can dispute, but you're not talking about 2 molecules in a dye stuff. You're talking a far broader range of chemicals. And it's by collaboration and engaging with the government authorities where you can make change. Certainly myself and titanium dioxide, I was sent down to the Parliament in London to put the case, and they listened for 2.5 hours. It was an interesting experience for myself.
With that positive note, and a positive note also from Pankaj, earlier to your question, I think we will close this panel discussion. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Karthik. I think it was an interesting panel discussion. Lots of issues still not resolved, but as you said, it's a journey, and through collaboration we will do it. And you can see 3 competitors sitting here and discussing these topics. That shows that
we're still alive.
And we're still friends.